to know a secret about PTO and PTA bylaws and what makes them good and what makes them not so good? Maybe this burning question has popped into your mind a few times, maybe one or two times. For me, I think about it a lot because I love a good set of bylaws and standing rules. If we haven't yet met, I am Christina Heideck. I am a PTO and family engagement expert. I really do love bylaws and standing rules. I've talked about it a couple, in actually more than just a couple videos, because I feel like they are so crucial to a healthy and vibrant and active PTO, and they can support school parent groups in more than just the obvious ways. More than just having a physical document that you can refer to. They are really the backbone of the group and kind of set out the group's hopes, the goals, the aims of the group, and can help keep everybody literally on the same page, which is hard when you are managing a volunteer organization, especially an all volunteer organization, which of course PTOs and PTAs are, right? So let's get into it. Really good bylaws address the group as it is now. Not as it was 5 years ago when your student enrollment might be different, like your numbers may have been increased or than what they are now, or maybe they were much lower than they are now. Good bylaws address your PTO or PTA as it is today. If there's not an alignment, if there are things in there that once worked but are no longer work, for example, if your group was once really big, your quorum was probably a lot bigger to kind of match the reality of the group as it was then. This is one situation that we had when I was PTA council president. Our quorum was set at 12 or something, which is not very large, but for a PTA council, now this works differently than a school parent group, like just in a school. So the council was made up of the presidents and the council representatives from each of the individual school units. So there were 6 schools total. So there were 6 presidents plus 1 or 2 delegates plus the executive board of the council. So like the total people we were talking about. So that could have been, let's see, 18 plus, let's say there were 6 officers. So 18 plus 6, 24. Well, then we were looking like less and less people were coming. And we were like, why are we having a hard time getting to quorum? Well, what ended up happening was fewer people were involved in the PTOs. And so schools were sending maybe just a president, maybe they didn't have a council delegate. And then the same people who were president or council delegate for their schools were also serving on the council executive board. So the total number of people involved, instead of being 24, was closer to like 15. So to get 12 people there for quorum, that's like goofy high, right? Because that is really hard to do. So we actually had to discuss lowering that number to make it more realistic based on who was actually coming, because the true amount of people who were actually coming was closer to 7 or 8. And so that's 8 is where we actually ended up landing, if you're interested, because we figured that it should be the majority of the schools should be participating, right? So that's, you have a baseline of 6 and then a couple extra thrown in for good measure. That was the thinking along there. And it ended up serving the group much better because we actually could never hit quorum when it was set so high, because it was not based on the group as it actually was in existence that very day. It was looking back to yesteryear and that condition that, I'll tell you, even to this day, and that decision was made probably 7 or 8 years ago, there's still not more people involved. So it really was crucial to address that. It wasn't a short-term trend. It was a larger change that was affecting all of the PTAs in our school district. So important to know that. So anyway, take a look at your bylaws and see where you have that same issue, not specifically about quorum. It could be about that quorum, but it could be about something else. It could be the number of committees that you have. When I was at the elementary school, we had a ton of different committees. And one in particular, we had a school like community garden that the PTA was supporting. And it turns out we didn't really have anybody, like this one year, we didn't really have anybody who was interested in doing it. And when we looked around the table at who was going to be involved, there was nobody who was interested in taking that on. Now, the PTA had expanded because enrollment had expanded, and actually quite drastically because 2 other elementary schools had closed. And so those parents had been folded in, like all the schools had merged. You know how you normally have like a group of volunteers at every school? Well, they were all merged. So the one school then, instead of having the normal number of parents who were involved, they had 3 times as many. And so they created more committees and more roles for those parents who wanted to be involved because they had so many helpers, right? Which was fantastic. But then what ended up happening was those parents worked through the system, right? And as their children graduated from the school, they were no longer involved at the school. And so the number of volunteers kind of shrank back down to like its normal size. So then we were left with all of this work to be done and not enough people to do it. So we had to eliminate some committees, and the community garden, or the school garden actually, was the one that we identified that needed to go. Sadly, sad but true. Sometimes you just got to do what's right for the group. And that was right for the group because at the time, when that committee was created, there was a need, but that need, it had come and gone. So really see where your group is maybe out of alignment and bring it into alignment by addressing it with an update to your bylaws. This video is brought to you by the Bylaws and Standing Rules Made Simple kit. It has everything you need, walks you through a step-by-step process of creating or updating your group's governing documents without the hassle, without the headache, without the questions. Right. The next thing that really good bylaws do is it's like a map, a user guide for your group. It provides a path to follow. Function-wise, it's kind of like a user manual or a user guide. So it should tell you everything you need to know. Well, not everything because it would be really long, but the most important issues to know about your group. It should set forth the officers that you have, the mission of your group, the major events of your group, like how things are going to be decided as far as handling money, elections, turnovers, vacancies, like all those things need to be in there. Bylaws also contain term limits, and like good term limits, not extended officer positions. Like a good friend of mine was in a role as president, and her term limit was 3 years. And I thought that is crazy banana long. Like I think you definitely need more than 1 year in the role of a president, but 2 I think is kind of the sweet spot. That would be my recommendation. I personally have done 2-year terms, and then I actually was a president for 3 years because it happened during COVID and it was just a very uncertain time and it was hard to recruit people. And so I just decided there's nobody else to take it on, and the group agreed that was probably in the best interest of the group just to keep things as they were. So I stayed on for that 3rd year, and that was a killer year. That was a total killer year for me because it's just too much. I think you spend too much time in a role and you really should cycle out and do something else. I think things get stale. I think people get used to doing like a little complacent. And when you have constant turnover of people in different roles, then that's really healthy for a group. And the best groups have not specialists, but kind of generalists. Personally, I've been involved in PTAs for the last, I think, 14 years. I've been in pretty much every single role except for the treasurer role, but I've been in all the other roles. And so that's really good because I know a lot about the group. I know about how PTOs function because I've been in those roles. Now, if you just are in one role, let's say you're just treasurer from one building to the next, and I have some friends who have done this. Now, they've had other roles too, but the treasurer role is a good one for someone to repeat, not year over year, but at different schools, like as they progress. So elementary to upper elementary to middle to high school. I think there's nothing wrong with repeating the role in different schools, but within a school, you should only be in a position for like 2 years. And I think you should move along to something else so that you have a general understanding of how the group works. It's also healthy for the group because then you don't have people who don't know how to do anything except for one thing. And that if that one person like moves or their children are no longer enrolled at the school, that you're not left in a lurch, that somebody else can step into that role and it won't be all new to them. Nothing wrong with having all new volunteers. It's just harder to run a group like that, and it takes more time, and it can be frustrating for the new leaders who might need some more support than they have available. Officer expectations should also be included in your bylaws. This comes up so many times where I see in the PTO Superstar Leader group, which is my free Facebook community. If you haven't yet joined, go ahead and request to join. I think there's a link in the description below. This comes up a lot because they'll say, this one officer is just like completely ghosted. They haven't been to a meeting. They're not responding. Well, that's like, you're not an officer just to be an officer and sit and fill that position and keep it warm. Like the whole purpose of being involved in a PTO as an officer is to act like a leader, is to contribute your opinions, your perspective, your expertise into the mix and help the group achieve its goals and its plans for the year. So if a particular officer is not contributing, then they really need to make room for someone who's willing to do the work. Setting out the expectations that they're coming to meetings, that they're participating in discussions. Many people come to me and said they use bad language, like offensive language. Well, put that in there then. Like put that in that they're expected to be civilly and act professionally. Like you don't have to say stop dropping F-bombs, but you can say officers are expected to act professionally. That kind of covers the bad language issue, right? Because if you are acting professionally, then you are not dropping those F-bombs left and right and not calling people out, and you are not being difficult to work with. So I think that kind of covers it in a really nice way. So there would be my suggested language for that. And then the last part of really good bylaws is using plain and clear, simple language. Like, I am tired of seeing these convoluted bylaws and standing rules that take several readings to understand, like that you have to keep reading over a particular clause many times because you're like, what? It is difficult to comprehend what they're actually saying. Using fancy language in bylaws and standing rules does not make them more official. It does not make them better. In fact, I would argue it makes them worse. I think it makes it unapproachable. You want people to be using these. You want people to be referencing them, and for the information in the bylaws and standing rules too, to be easy for everyone to understand and use in their role as a PTO volunteer. As a PTO member, they need to understand what is going on and how the group operates. If it is super funky and you're using all this legalese, all this gobbledygook, you're not meeting that goal. You're not going to be making it easier for people. So I would just ask you, when you are updating your bylaws and standing rules, just to look at how you can say it more simply, make it easier to understand. So that's certainly a process. If you take it item by item, then it really becomes an approachable process. So I hope that this has really cleared some things up for you about bylaws, because so many people are so put off by them and they're like, ugh, bylaws, I don't want to do it. It's kind of like a contract. You're like allergic to anything legal. But really, the governing documents for your group are so important, and that you should be embracing them, not running from them. And I hope that the information I've shared today has helped you do just that. Please join me for my next video, and take care until then.